The Feed.
Libsyn Studio Update. A special live recording of The Feed. Libsyn 5 Refresh is live. Plus, feedback on Libsyn Connect. The great Twitter migration. I know that y'all have been watching that. Clarifying platform TOSs. The impact of being everywhere for audience growth. Tools for podcast planning in 2023. Getting fired because of your podcast. The Indie Pod Census. And as always, download stats this time. Geographic and user agent. Hello. I am Elsie Escobar. I'm the Director of Community and Content for Libsyn. And this is episode 231 of The Feed, the official Libsyn podcast, the podcast that takes it beyond how to podcast into keeping you podcasting with podcasting tips and information for the everyday podcaster and taking you inside Libsyn. Speaking of that, Libsyn Studio is slowly being released to all plan levels starting today. That said, as of now, only a small percent of users may see access under the new episode button. If you would like to give it a try and test out a quick audio recording and be part of the next group of Libsyn customers to get access, email Yvette at Libsyn.com. And Yvette is YVETTE at Libsyn.com. FYI, Libsyn Studio was designed for those who have little or no experience recording. All right? Little to no experience recording. It is going to be a fantastic tool for those that are just getting started or want to super simplify their podcast production. All right? So again, if you want access, please email Yvette at Libsyn.com. And last quickie announcement, I want your promos, y'all. If you want to be featured this year or even early 2023, send the audio to thefeed at Libsyn.com. And now to our main conversation with Rob Walsh, VP of Podcaster Relations at Libsyn, as well as my co-host, right after the first promo of the episode, Propaganda.
I'm Nicolo Aid. I'm a writer and comedian, and I'd love for you to listen to my new podcast, Propaganda. It's a comedy podcast about what cop movies teach us about policing. Each episode, I rewatch a classic cop film with a comedian friend, and we try to learn what is the ideal cop. Episodes include Dirty Harry with Tristan Griffin, RoboCop with Monique Moses, 48 Hours with Griffin Newman. So many exciting guests, so many great movies. I wish you would join me. Again, the podcast is called Propaganda. Get it wherever you get podcasts.
Hello, Rob.
Good generic time of the day, Elsie.
Yay! Happy November for us. Here we are.
This is a strange month. Literally, we will only record one in the month.
That's right. Wait. No, we will record two.
No, the other one we recorded before the month was started. It released in the month, but we will only have recorded one in the month of November.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Well, we're recording our live one on November 30th.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
The 30th? I thought that was the 1st.
No, it's on the 30th. Remember, I couldn't be the 1st.
Okay. My bad.
I was like, I got so confused. I was like, wait, is it November right now?
We have a live one coming up?
We have a live recording coming up, Rob Walsh.
Is that going to include video? Like I have to shave and be all presentable and turn lights on?
Yes, absolutely. We
Clean
have
up the mess behind me.
Yes, absolutely. So, hey, listen, might as well let you all into our special November 30th live recording of The Feed. It's going to be episode 232. It might say 231 when you go check. Because we made a mistake, but still, it's going to be 232. And it's going to be including video. So we're going to have so much fun. Remember that thing with the artwork, Rob, that you asked about?
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that later. But yes, we're going to go over some of those artworks.
Live on our show.
So if you didn't take me up on that challenge, do so before.
Wait, you can't say that. You know why? Because then it's going to be a live show talking about artwork, and we're not going to do that.
Yeah, yes.
yeah, we'll see. But yeah, so we're doing that. Look at the link in the show notes, or you can just head over to youtube.com/Libsyn or follow us at LIBSYN Libsyn on YouTube, because we now have our special handle, and get notified. Hit that little notification button and put it in your calendar. That's going to be awesome. All right. So given that, Libsyn 5 had a little bit of a design refresh, and it is live now. So there's been an updated color scheme. So it's a little different. It says, when I read this, it said from green to blue. And I was like, blue to me, what does blue say to you? Blue is like blue, right? Like the sky. But this is not, I don't think it's blue like the sky.
It's a purplish blue.
A purplish blue? No, it's a teal.
Okay.
It's like a teal. It's like a greenish blue, not a purplish blue.
I'm bad with colors.
I know. It's like a teal, and we move the main navigation links to the top, and they are really clear, so that it's like, it says dashboard and statistics and all that stuff. And there are some updated charts and button styling here and there. But here's the scoop for y'all. If you are having trouble, of course, you can always email support@libsyn.com, right? So that's a thing. If you had trouble, email support@libsyn.com. Now, if you do have feedback about the actual update, whether it's about, I don't know, the colors, the layout, what it is, what it isn't, whether it's like, oh my God, this is amazing, or why did you do that? You now have a place where you can let your voice be heard. So put this in your little email in your phone right now, product@libsyn.com. And that goes to the product team. So if you have any thoughts, feedback, some ideas, some stuff that's not working, some stuff that's really great that you really love, they are there to get your thoughts. So product@libsyn.com.
And if you're someone that's still on Libsyn 4 and haven't looked at it, the original Libsyn 5 design, and you went back to 4, you may want to check out the new Libsyn 5.
Then you knew. The refreshed, Rob. The refreshed Libsyn 5. Libsyn 5. Okay. But speaking of product, though, you've got some Libsyn Connect testimonial. A testimonial. You have a testimonial.
Okay. Yes. So this one was sent in. This person using Libsyn Connect, one of the beta testers. Quote, I am currently a college student in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Woohoo! With a startup podcast that covers different tales and stories from sports across the globe. I recently used Libsyn Connect to conduct an interview for an upcoming episode. When editing the audio, it was so clear and concise, it sounded like my guest was in the room with me. For any interviews I conduct in the future, Libsyn Connect will definitely be what I use. Unquote. And that was from Gage, Tales of the Game podcast. So thank you, Gage, for that. And then from our product manager, Yvette, who is the product manager for Libsyn Connect, she said there's some new features that were recently completed or will be completed by the time episode 231 goes live. And they include the ability to customize duration of the calls to have it reflect on the invitation. So if you send out an invitation for an hour and 45-minute call, it will be there on people's calendar. Indefinite call lengths, which when I saw that indefinite call lengths, I said, wow, Elsie, we got lucky, I guess. I didn't know we had a defined limit on what the call lengths were, because we've gone long.
Yes, we have.
We've gone close to 2 hours on calls, so maybe the limit was 2 hours. We must have been coming real close a couple times. Updated calendar entries, human readable download file names. Yay! Because first thing I used to do when I downloaded the files was change the file names. This is especially true if you choose the option to have separate tracks for each person. Improved UI of mic list, a new color scheme, which I'm telling you, I'm looking at this color scheme. It looks bluish purple to me.
Because Libsyn Connect is bluish purple, but Libsyn 5 is not bluish purple. It's teal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're talking about two separate things. So this one does look like bluish purple. Yes, this is more blue. This would be like, oh, it's blue, right? So that is, you are not wrong about that.
Okay. I was thinking the two matched up, and I was only in the new Libsyn 5 UI briefly yesterday. Ability to start calls in advance. So In the original one we were running with, if you had set the time for 7 or 8 a.m., the call wouldn't start till 8 a.m. So I was always sending out 7:55. So now I can send 8 a.m. invites instead of 7:55 invites. So thanks, Yvette, for those updates. And thanks to all the beta testers and listeners of this podcast that are providing feedback to get it ready for its official launch, which will be shortly. But again, if you do want to get in before the official launch, just email me, rob@libsyn.com, and I will introduce you to Yvette and get you set up as a beta tester.
Yay. That's awesome. Okay, shall we talk about the topic?
This is one where we have differing opinions, so
we do.
You can go first.
Yeah, I can go. Well, we're actually talking now about the great Twitter migration that is going down as we speak.
If there is such a thing.
If there is such a thing as Twitter. No, listen, because by the time this goes out, I honestly don't know what's happening because it's like moment to moment, to be honest. So there is a lot of talk about people leaving Twitter, communities just going a little nutty. And there's been a lot of talk about many different places. So I'm here just to share with you about a new community for podcasters. So this is not for your podcast. This is for podcasters that is in Discord. So there is a new podcasters community. I believe by the time you hear this, that community probably will have hit around 1,000 people. Obviously, it's for free. I will have a link in the show notes. Although one thing that I don't know about these links is that I don't know how long they stay live. That is something that I don't know about Discord. So I did grab this from the community myself, right? And then I'm posting it in our show notes. I'm going to see how it works by the time you guys get it, because I have seen that it seems like they shift or something, or they change every 7 days. I'm not sure if that's true, or I don't know if I got the wrong link. But anyway, it's Discord for podcasters. If the link is expired or something like that and you want in, you can email the feed at libsyn.com and you in the header say podcaster Discord ? And I'll share it with you. And it's not from us. This was started by Ariel Nissenblatt, who has been very active on Twitter, and she's been doing all kinds of community building on Twitter as a platform, and just kind of began this community. And it is currently being moderated and put together by a lot of different podcasters. So it's nice. It's nice. I've been checking it out on the daily, just feeling out the vibe in there. As of now, it is active. So people are talking, and it's really neat. It's got some really great regulations or rules around where to put stuff. And there's all kinds of like neat little bot things. So if you join and you want, like, if you're a Twitter, somebody who writes for podcasts, you go to one place. If you're a podcast beginner, you have access to other channels. If you're a podcast or industry person, you get access to other channels, and it's kind of nice. It's very nice to be able to go in there. So that's one place that I've been hanging out. But then I've also been hanging out on Mastodon. Yes. What do you think about that, Rob?
Well, all right. So first, if you want to join Mastodon, there's a Gizmodo article on how to do it. It was a 2,500 word article on how to join Mastodon. Yes. 2,500 words.
Yes.
Insert dramatic pause. All right.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So here were my comments in the Nashville Facebook podcast community page. Mastodon is not going to replace Twitter and is nowhere close to it. It is much too technical for your average person. It is something people mad at Elon want to say is an alternative, but is not an alternative to Twitter any more than Linux is an alternative to Windows. And then there was some other feedback and people saying, well, podcasting was all, and they're trying to compare it to podcasting. And then I replied back, look, I see a bunch of people, but a very small percentage overall on Twitter saying they are moving to Mastodon. They are quitting Twitter, except Twitter is where the audience is. And many, if not 99% of these people will be back to Twitter. Social media networks work different than podcasting. I remember what it was like when Twitter started. They were one of many microblogs, and I had accounts and all. But ultimately, Twitter won that segment of the social media. If someone wants to use Mastodon, great, use it. Just know the audience will be very small compared to Twitter. Same with other Twitter competitors. and that it is more technical and just confusing to many based on comments pretty much everywhere, including the 2,500 word article from Gizmodo. I don't see it as a viable replacement to Twitter. My tweet this morning was, Mastodon is to Twitter what Clubhouse is to podcasting, meaning, sure, it's a shiny thing and some people are going to use it and some people will find success there. But at the end of the day, the masses are going to be back at Twitter. And that's just my opinion. It's just too complicated, too confusing for regular users. Maybe things will clean up. They have all these different servers you got to log in with. You don't know which one you're signing on. Like your Mastodon is mastodon.coffee/@LC and mine is mastodon.online/@podcast101. Yes, of course I got an account there. I get accounts at everywhere. I just say, if you want to plant your flag there, sure, do it. I do recommend getting your branding on it because you never know. But I can't recommend spending time there. Getting your presence built up in another social media place. How much work is that going to take? What's that going to do to your workflow for your podcast? If you're spending all this time trying to build up your reputation on another social media place where you could be just spending time working on your podcast. And that's always where my Scrooge McDuck comes out on these new things is if it takes away from you working on your podcast, I don't see that as a good thing. Just like I didn't see Clubhouse as a good thing, or Second Life, or Meerkat, or Google Plus, or ... Insert shiny thing of the moment here for the last 18 years. Just focus on your podcast. If you're on Twitter, go and grab a Mastodon account, sure. But I wouldn't spend a lot of your time if it's going to take anything away from your podcast production work.
Yeah. I think my disagreement with you is not necessarily about, I think we're talking about it from two separate points of view. Like I'm looking at what's happening right now on Twitter and other places, not for podcasters only, but as a fundamental shift in what social media is for us now, in how it is and the power that it holds, and that it's shifting, it's changing. Like it's never going to be the way that it was. That's just a fact. So in the way that we've been using Twitter and what it has done for us in the past, it's going to change. So you're not going to be able to use Twitter in the same way. And when I say that, I'm not saying that it's going to change in how you tweet and how you go about the interface or the platform, but it is really affecting algorithms and it's affecting the way that maybe your reach happens. And this is happening a lot more for larger accounts than smaller accounts, right? So I would say I believe I have like something like 7,000 followers, right? So I don't consider myself huge. I mean, I'm not like super tiny, but I don't feel too much affected by it because I don't feel my account ever was like, I've never gone viral. I don't really have lots and crazy amount of likes. Like I have a pretty decent engagement rate for the amount of followers that I have. But I have seen some of the larger accounts that already have been greatly impacted by the reach of their tweets. And it's all moving towards, the conversation of having to be Twitter Blue. And if you are paying $8 a month for Twitter, you are going to get some perks. There are going to be some algorithmic perks. There's going to be some way in which people are going to see your stuff. So if you are using it 100% for your podcast and your podcast is in some way fueling a business of any kind of yours, whether it is standalone, meaning you have a membership, maybe you have ads, maybe you have whatever, maybe this is something for your marketing reach for your business. I would think that having a Twitter Blue account is going to be a thing for you. You're going to probably have to pony up.
You have been verified, right?
No, I personally have not been verified. Oh. Libsyn has been verified.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. So Libsyn is verified. I have never been verified. So I'm not losing anything and I'm not really planning on doing the Twitter Blue thing. But I think Libsyn will probably go about doing that again, because it's a bit, so it's a totally different conversation, right? We have to really figure out what happens. So I'm not even talking about it from the podcaster's perspective here. I'm talking about livelihood, the ability for people to see your stuff and whether or not that verification actually means something for you. And so in that respect, there are going to be some fundamental changes. So even if you are on Twitter and you're like, well, you used to do one thing, it may not work in the same way that it used to work for you. So you might have to find an alternative way to promote your show or to get more reach. You might have to spend money on the platform. You might have to do things like that. So I'm looking at it from that perspective, that it fundamentally it's going to change. And if you have a strong community on Twitter, this is probably a really good time for you to think about an alternative. I'm not talking about a mass exodus. I'm thinking about is there another place that you can connect with your folks? If you already have an email newsletter for your podcast, good for you. You're ahead of the game. So you get an opportunity to do that. That's the first place that I would go, would be getting an email newsletter, even if it's free and you just start it up, and think about what type of content would be beneficial to your people, even if it's hey, latest episode is out. Here's the thing, right? At least that we can do that. There's no way to do that on Mastodon, as far as I know. You can start your own server, but that's a whole thing that you probably don't want to do. Not at this moment. But Discord is another choice. There's lots of Facebook groups that are still going strong. There's lots of different things that you can consider doing. Again, the one thing that I do feel is really important is that you cannot start investing so much time on social for social's sake to the detriment of your show, regardless of what it is. If you are investing time and resources in researching how best to serve your podcasting community, that's a different thing, right? It's a different thing than to go mess around and do stuff. If you are strategically looking for alternatives to build your community and to facilitate conversations between your audience, that's a different conversation. Feel free to do that. Feel free to test things out. And that's not time wasted. But if you are just going where's everybody going? What are we going to do? Because you're going to have to learn no matter what. I personally have been enjoying Mastodon. I'm going to share an article that was really helpful, an article/podcast episode, actually, from the Lawfare podcast. And the title of the episode is called Decentralized Social Media and the Great Twitter Exodus. Very aptly named. It's a really, really intelligent conversation. It really breaks down what Mastodon is, why it's good, why it's not good, moderation in those channels, community building in those channels, as well as what this, issues that might be arising in terms of social media as a whole. It's really worth your listen if you're curious about Mastodon and anything else that you might want to do.
Here's what Twitter really needs to do when I think about this, though. They just need to add, rather than a blue check mark, they just need to add a traffic light representing you're a human. You're not a bot.
Oh, a traffic light.
Because whenever you have to do those things, it's always you're picking the traffic lights.
Yes. Oh, I see. Yes. Well, I just had to pick bunnies for Discord, or was it Mastodon? I can't remember. Anyway, go ahead.
But Mastodon was a truck for me. I think it was. But they had 3 different things and picked a truck. But the point is, if Twitter wants to do something, the best thing they could do is verify people are human, right?
Right.
And then you have the non-verified or bots and humans or at one level, and then you can have the whatever elite pay Twitter extra money for the other stuff. But we'll see where it goes. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I think a traffic light for non-humans, that would be great. But the thing is, the server, I have been spending time at Mastodon. Mind you, here's the other thing though. This is my job, right? Mm-hmm. There's an element of me going into these places, engaging in these places, testing out platforms, figuring out what things are. That's part of my job description, essentially. It's what I do. And so I've been able to go spend some time in these places. And I have found that, I started using Mastodon in April 2021, I think, was the first account that I opened up. And I did not like it at all. At all. I felt like I was in a new world with people who I would never in a million years go hang out with at all. Zero. And so I felt like a fish out of water. I didn't really want to talk. I didn't know how it all worked. It was really confusing, all that. So I would go in there and kind of read stuff and leave with, I didn't learn anything. And people were speaking a language that I didn't understand. Mind you, though, I didn't understand about the whole different servers part. I was in one server that I didn't get. And so I did sign up for this coffee server that, that people just like, I just popped up. I'm like, I'll do that one. It sounds cool. So it's the Mastodon.coffee, and it's really chill. It's like people just literally talking about coffee stuff. It's very not political. It's none of that kind of stuff, but you do get access to everything else, which is I'm not going to talk about Mastodon right now. But anyway, I've been enjoying myself. I've actually had a great time over there lately. I go in it at night. I really quickly check out what everybody's talking about, the people that I'm following and all that stuff. And I think at the time of this, I've had like 80 something followers, which is kind of nice. It's neat.
Again, I just think it comes down to, you said server, and that went right over the head of the everyday users.
Absolutely.
And that's what's going to restrict Mastodon, still too technical at this point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's a lot of that happening for sure. But then, here's my question to you, Rob. I mean, do you remember Twitter back in the day?
I remember Twitter when you needed a cell phone to sign up.
Yeah.
Initially, you had to have a cell phone to register with Twitter in the very beginning. I remember that, in the 140 characters, and then I remember going to 280, but that was way after that. I was a top 25 most followed person on Twitter with 400 followers, right? So that tells
gives you an idea.
But I never stayed up with it, obviously. I'm lucky if I'm in the top 25% now. I concentrated on my content. Twitter was nice. It was a way for me when I started just to say, hey, I'm going to be interviewing such and such. Do you have any questions for the person? That was what I used Twitter for in the early days.
It was like Twitter in the early days was kind of what the podcasting community, Twitter community in there is right now, which is like just all the podcasters talking to each other. It literally was that. All the podcasters talking to each other. All of Twitter was that. Mm-hmm. And it used to be remember when you used to have to send private messages or DMs or whatever, you had to put a little D in front of when you tweeted out, like there wasn't even a place. Like you had to do it with a character, right? And so there was all kinds of confusing things. I remember saying like what my whatever name was, trying to tell people what that was, like in my yoga class. I'm like, I'm on Twitter, and people are like, what are you talking about? And you just write these little things and it goes out where, I mean, it was just so confusing to tell the layperson to use. And it took, I think, like 5 to 7 years for people to start to use Twitter in the way that it's used now. So all I'm saying to that is that if you would have told the layperson to use Twitter back in the day, they would have still been like, this is too confusing. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And then now Mastodon feels that way. And yes, it is by far much more complex than Twitter ever was. But every time we start using, I mean, come on, Rob, podcasting, same thing.
Look, I'm not saying don't get your flag planted. I'm just saying don't spend a lot of time if it takes away from your podcast.
Exactly. I think bottom line, we both agree on that. Because there's going to be more new shiny objects. And for sure, I just found out there's another Twitter X person because, I don't know, half of Twitter was fired or laid off. And there's a new Twitter person who is currently live, as in like live online, developing a Twitter competitor. There's no name to it. Currently, it's like T2. That's what it says. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to that article so that you guys can follow that if you want.
I would put more money on something new that we haven't heard of supplanting Twitter than Mastodon at this point, unless Mastodon completely changes.
Yeah. So this article, it is from a Twitter veteran. It is from TechCrunch, and he is tweeting about it, of course, because why not? But he also has what's really interesting is that he has a Google Doc where he is outlining the business plan and how he is putting that out, how he visions it from like all the different quarters, product development, like all of that online. And then there's a little landing page where you can submit to join this alternative that has no name at this moment. It's just really interesting. So things like that are very interesting to me. I think that this is not going to be the only one, and there's going to be a lot of them, and we'll see what sticks and what doesn't, right? That's just what's going to happen. Now, for those of you who do have built large audiences in one platform, whether it's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is that you're using, if you have, I would say 60 to 70% of your audience in a community there, and it is a substantial community where you feel like, oh my gosh, they're so engaged. Regardless of where you are, I would start to think about alternatives. Like, what is your exit strategy? Where else can you keep a connection with your people? And always know that you're going to lose, I would say, about 50% of them. They're not going to go wherever it is that you want them to go. And the only reason people are going to move to your new place, wherever it is that you're telling them to go, is if it hits critical mass and it hits a point where things are literally on fire, which is what's happening with Twitter right now. It finally got to a place where people were like, this is nuts. Give me anything. And so they all flocked. And the reason that Mastodon at this point is working for some people is because it did actually hit critical mass for their audiences. And therefore, there is a substantial amount of people that they are connecting with that they already know in that new place. And that makes it so much better for people to stick around when you find people who are there that are your people. Right? If nobody's there, that was my experience when I went into Instagram for the first time with the Libsyn account. I opened up the Libsyn account. I started posting on Instagram. Zero of anything, Rob. It was like painful. I was talking. I mean, we could even go all the way back on the feed. And I was like, we have an Instagram account. I'm putting Instagram. Who's going on Instagram? The majority of people would be like, Instagram? What's Instagram? Right? It was so weird. It's really uncomfortable to be in a new place by yourself for a long time. But that's why Mastodon is doing so well. But anyway, I think that's enough. If you have any thoughts, please do send them in over to the feed at libsyn.com and we can talk about it on our live show. Send audio feedback because if you do, you will get onto our live show. And how cool would that be? Anyway, here we go. We've got another email here. Would you like me to read this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, team. Was looking at destinations to add and thought about Stitcher. Created a Simplecast Creator Connect account for Stitcher, Sirius, and Pandora, but reading the terms was like donating a kidney. All rights gone. They can use, chop up, own everything, blah, blah, blah. So needless to say, I have not submitted my Libsyn RSS feed. Is this a good move? Or is submitting your RSS feed and agreeing to all the terms pretty standard to be found on these platforms? Love guidance from you and would love to maximize reach. Happy for Elsie and Rob to include this question on their potty too, to workshop it. Best wishes, and this is from Joy, from the Nerds of Joy podcast.
Joy, thank you for sending that in. And one, please note, with Libsyn, when you add a destination, you will see there are terms of service for those specific destinations. We negotiated better TOS than the standard. We removed little things like transferable, non-revocable, perpetual from the licenses.
Pretty little thing.
Yeah. I have seen many that try to get you to give them a perpetual, transferable, non-revocable license. No, 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 no. So, Joy, you are smart to read the fine print and make sure that it is not something you are giving up of your rights for your content. And if you want to get on Pandora, let me know. We can add your show with better terms than what is available via Stitcher integration. Yeah, and I think now when you go to Stitcher and you submit you to Stitcher and another place, and then also Pandora. So the Sirius was the other one. Yes, read those fine print. Absolutely. Good job, Joy.
Good job, Joy. That was not so much of a workshop. That was more of a information.
I worked hard on those terms and conditions. When we negotiate those with different destinations, we add them and going through and making sure we pull out things to make those T's and C's podcaster friendly. A lot of them, they come up with these default things because the lawyer says, oh, we do this, and then if we get sold or this. But here's the problem. If you sign a thing that says you're giving them perpetual, transferable, non-revocable rights, and you got a vegan podcast and they want to sell your rights to Burger King for the new Burger King podcast network, they can do it. So you want to be careful on terms of service when you sign up to any of these things, because you never know where your content's going to wind up, and you want to have control of it.
Absolutely. And you have to remember, things like that, yes, they are a little bit scary. A lot of them are standard, right? It's not unusual. I mean, and like I do absolutely agree. Rob does work hard to make sure that he takes the scary, scary, bad stuff out. And we just don't approve it. So feel safe.
If you're signing up and you're a podcast host and you can click one button to submit everywhere, you're submitting to their default terms of service, which are scary. That's why we have them as different destinations, so you can get those better terms of service. But yeah, when you're submitting to some place, there's some services that you click once, submit everywhere, and it goes out to Deezer and Ghana and GeoSavin. Well, you're getting their default terms of service, which aren't so nice.
Okay. And on that note, though, actually staying on this vein, on the importance of being everywhere, we have a little bit of feedback here. Here we go.
Hi, Elsie. Hi, Rob. Let me go long form here and wish a good generic time of the day to both of you. Mark Dacote here from the Lord of the Rings of Power podcast, Tales from Middle-earth, which you can find easily enough at theringsofpowerpodcast.com. I wanted to call in and thank you for consistently drilling into us the importance of having our show on as many platforms as we can, and to Libsyn for making it so easy to be on all of them. I received an email today from a listener thanking me for my show. When she started watching The Rings of Power on Amazon Prime, she decided she wanted to refamiliarize herself with the source materials. So she went to her favorite app, Audible, and searched for the Lord of the Rings audiobooks. Lo and behold, she found my podcast in the search results because I submitted my show to Amazon. The best thing is, she had never listened to a podcast before, but now that she knows that podcasts are available on Audible and that they're free, she plans on searching for more. I wanted to mention this to listeners of the feed. If you have a podcast that is in any way related to a book, make sure you submit your show to Amazon because it can be found by people searching for that book. It's yet another way to grow your audience. Take care, guys. Keep up the great work.
Mark, thanks for the kind words and the great success story. And I say that because when you are everywhere and you are discovered by someone that was not a podcast listener, you succeeded with the goal of why you should be everywhere. Stumbled upon audience. Love, love, love them.
Stumble upon. That was another one. Remember that, Rob? I used to spend a lot of time on Stumble Upon.
Having somebody stumble upon podcasting that's not a podcast listener and find your podcast.
Yep.
That is great. This email, it was like the opposite of last episode's worst email of the week where a person only wanted to be in two places.
Yes.
So I kind of guess, Mark, that makes yours the best email of the week if the other one was the worst email of the week last week.
This would be correct. And also, I mean, he really called out a very specific tactical approach to this, which was, it is a complete no-brainer. If you have a podcast that is based on any kind of book or author for that matter, I would even say, like, if you cover a specific author, it's a no-brainer for you to market more to Audible.
Which you do that by submitting into Amazon. It gets you into Audible.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. If you submit your show into Amazon Music, which is owned, they're the same company for Audible, it will be an Audible. And I would even venture to say, and I know that, we love Apple, by the way, Apple Podcast is for sure the winner of all the things. But in some cases, a very strategic marketing approach, or you on social, going back to social, talking about you being available in Audible to your audience, if the books are the thing, is one of the best places to do that. Because if you do have readers already, think about, like, I read with my ears all the time. I read every night, and I don't use Audible as much as I do Libby, which is my favorite app. But when I do go into Audible, it is really great to remember, oh yeah, there's my podcast are here, right? So if somebody is already listening to a book every day, and they have your companion podcast right next to that, that's genius. All right. So we have a lot of tools for podcast planning for 2023, because as you know, we are literally about 6 or 5 weeks left of the year when this goes live. Is that right, Rob? I think.
Yeah, I think you tweeted the other day something like it's only 7 weeks left, or 7.5 weeks for the end of the year. So yes, so we're 7 weeks now.
Yeah. So given that, this is a fantastic time when you're listening to the show. This is when podcast planning is really great because it has not yet hit December. Once you hit December, it's a little harder because we got all kinds of other things happening family wise and all the things we all know and love and maybe not love. And so we're putting out a series of blog posts. I've already worked on 2. Leslie has been helping me put some of these out for us. The current ones that are already published is podcast planning, what's left to do in 2023, which is a little like inventory taking kind of a thing of what you have coming up so that you can figure out what it is exactly that you need to do so that you have the best experiencing finishing the year. The second one is look back to move forward in 2023. And what that means is that is an actual inventory of what already happened this year for your podcast. What worked, what didn't work, like you sit down with yourself and you do all of that stuff. And then we are going to be doing a series of another 3 blog posts that are going to be published in the next following weeks. The only week that there won't be a blog post going live is on Thanksgiving week. But after that, there will be 2 more of this series. And that's going to be all about planning your podcast. So if you don't know about our blog, just check it out over at libsyn.com/blog. And if you have an RSS feed reader, subscribe to our blog in your RSS feed reader and mark it with a little star so that you can see us whenever these come out and you're able to read them there because it's very nice. So this is going to be a wonderful tool for you to work with and plan your podcast for next year.
Links in the show notes.
Links in the show notes. All right. And now what do we have, Rob?
Okay. So we mentioned earlier, the challenge of people sending in their artwork for their show and having me guess what it's about. We'll go over that more on episode 232. But I was able to get almost all of them correct, which means job well done to those that created the artwork. You want me to get it right? You want this to be a game show on Idiocracy where people can get it right. If you haven't seen Idiocracy, please go see that. But I did have one person that blocked out the text on the artwork. And I said to them, blocking out the text makes it not a fair test as people in Apple Podcasts and other apps will see the text. And if the text and title gives away what the podcast is about, then kudos. Again, job well done. If you want to shrink the artwork down to 55 by 55 pixels and leave in the text, I can take a look and guess. But again, having text that gives it away is a good thing, as long as it's a little bit of text. Hint, you do not want to be fooling me with this challenge. You want me to figure it out quickly and easily, like playing Connect the Dots with 2 dots or playing Where's Waldo at a Browns game. That type easy. Sorry, Jim. Folks, you want people to figure out what your show is about almost instantly when they look at your artwork. And that includes with a very limited amount of text in that artwork. So again, look at your artwork, 57 by 57 or 55 by 55 pixels. And that's kind of how people get to see it in Apple Podcasts.
Nice.
Okay.
And we have another email here. Hi, Rob and Elsie. Thank you for the excellent podcast. I'm looking for a solution for a small problem. I need to have a few lines in each episode spoken by the computer. I make my podcast in Adobe Audition on OS X, which can generate speech using the built-in OS X voice capability. But a note in the legal agreements from Apple, it appears that this is not an allowed use. Subject to the terms and conditions of this license. So this is from the
Apple. This is from the Apple OS, Mac OS Monterey.
Yeah. So this is a quote from them. Subject to the terms and conditions of this license, you may use the system voice included in the Apple software System Voices while running the Apple software and to create your own original content and projects for your personal, non-commercial use. No other use of the System Voices is permitted by this license, including but not limited to the use, reproduction, display, performance, recording, publishing, or redistribution of any of the System Voices in a profit, nonprofit, public sharing, or commercial context. End quotes. And the person continues, do you have a recommendation for a solution? I see some generators online, but I'd hate to use them because the usage rights isn't clear, and I don't want to rely on an external website to generate a signature part of my show. That website may be gone in 2 months. Who knows? Any suggestion would be helpful. Regards, name redacted.
Hi, NR. And thanks for the email and for pointing out that we should not, per Apple's T's and C's, be using the system voice for podcasts. Maybe the title of this episode is The Fine Print Isn't So Fine. But there is a service called Typecast at typecast.ai. They did say this on their site. When uploading content to an online channel, i.e. or e.g. YouTube, with a free plan, your content must provide attribution to Typecast. Paid plan users can use without attribution. Paid plans start at $8.99 a month. So typecast.ai, and I'll have a link in the show notes to that. Of course, there's Descript and Speechify and others. You may want to look at the terms of service for both of those. And folks out there, if you have a favorite voice generation service, please let me know. Key is what I would say people really want to look for here is a simple UI for entering text and then a way to easily download the audio file, and you can easily then edit that into your episodes. Typecast.ai does check both of those boxes with their paid plan. After you type the text in, there's a button that says download. You just click download, it drops the file, and you just edit it right in. So you're not trying to record from the microphone from your computer with your mic over the thing. You're getting an actual nice recording that you can put in that's clean. And you can, with their pro plan, you can even adjust pitches, and there's a bunch of other stuff you can do. So I know some people that have used Typecast.ai for a while, and I don't have a paid plan, but again, for $8.99, if this is something you're looking for and you don't want to have to worry about the rights, they at least state right there. For paid plan users, you can use without attribution. And I did look through their terms of service again, which I put a link to in the show notes here, and everything looks kosher there. But I'm not a lawyer, so please check with a lawyer if you're really concerned there.
Very cool. This might be not what you're looking for. And hey, I'm just voicing it because I was like, oh, I wonder if, can you record something and then like put a thing with your voice and make it sound like a computer?
Oh, yeah. You can pitch shift your voice and yeah.
I was just thinking of that. I don't know if that counts for something like that, because I do know in, things like GarageBand and all kinds of things, you could just record it and then make yourself sound like a computer. Maybe that's not something you want. Maybe you really just want to, obviously, maybe it's a workflow thing, and having that computer speak is really a very important part, and there's not the optimal sound, but I was just thinking about that.
In GarageBand, it's really easy because you just set a second track right below the first track. And on the second track, you just set up the second track to have the pitch shift and everything. And then you just stop recording on the one track. You just click down on the next track, continue recording. It'll change your voice and then switch back up. That's a really great idea, Elsie.
And also another thing is that I do believe you don't even have to do what you just did. If you do create like a track already in there and like you just want to create that one track, you can upload like an audio already done and it'll do it. Like it does, you don't have to record it directly into GarageBand to get that. So that's just another thing too. But anyway, let us know what you pick, because that would be great. If this was at all helpful, it would be amazing. This is another email, folks. Hi, Rob. This morning we had a guest ask us to immediately edit something out of one of the episodes that his audience found questionable. We've done that edit and uploaded the new episode to Libsyn. The question that remains from our guest is, does the podcast update on all platforms? It seemed to me like people that who had already downloaded the show to a given platform, for example, Spotify, may not get their audio refreshed right away or perhaps ever. Do you suspect that may be the case here still? Just so I can provide assurance where necessary. And I suppose to those people who may still have to have the old audio, they can go listen to the show on another platform to hear the updated audio tonight, tomorrow to be safe. For anyone who has previously downloaded the episode, can you speak to how this works? I'm 87% sure I know the answer, but I want to provide 100% sure answer. Thank you.
All right. So first, anyone that downloaded the original version, if it's downloaded on their computer, they'll always have that version. And if you downloaded it with Apple Podcasts, there's nothing you as the podcaster are going to do to change that version that's been downloaded. But yes, changing the version does mean all the destinations, when someone new comes along, will get just that new version. And same for anyone that just progressively downloaded before, i.e. what people think is streaming. So a lot of people now, the way the default options are on Apple Podcasts, when they click play, even when they're subscribed, it's not doing a full download. It's a progressive download. So if they go back to listen to it and they haven't downloaded it, they'll hear the new version. But again, the reality is this. The majority of new listeners from this point forward will just get the new version, but a small percentage will have that old version. And there's nothing you can do to really get rid of that old version for what people have downloaded. Spotify is a little bit of a strange beast in that you can change out a downloaded version in Spotify if you change the file name, but then changing the file name causes issues with Apple Podcasts. So there's other issues you have to be concerned about there. So if your audience is mostly in Apple Podcasts, I would keep the URL the same. But if you do change the version, the URL, Spotify was then re-downloading. And I don't know if they still do that. They were re-downloading the version to replace. But overall, again, nothing you can do 100% to get rid of the old version. But the majority of the new people listening will get the new version.
And to add another layer to that too, it's like once you see, let's say you look at the podcast stats in your Libsyn account or something and you see the downloads. There's also nothing that you can say, meaning like, let's say you see, 100 people download or 100, you got 100 downloads of the file. Oh my gosh. And then you changed it and it was just those 100. You can't actually even say to that person, like 100 people are going to listen,
right,
because that may not be the case. That might have just downloaded and you don't know the exact number of human beings who will listen based on that 100 count of downloads. So it might actually not be as many as 100. So,
but of that 100, some of them, a small number, who have not listened will at some point listen. So
yes,
his audience had concerns. There'll be somebody in the audience that's going to email about that concern in the future. And it doesn't mean that the wrong version's out there. It just means that they had downloaded it previously.
Yeah, that's a good call out, because then you need to make sure that you tell them to say like, yes, we are aware and the file was changed on, within hours, you must have gotten one of the earlier whatevers, that kind of stuff. So
do you ever have a guest ask you to take down or change an episode after it went up?
I don't have a podcast
You didn't?
like that. I don't have an interview show. Yeah. I mean, we have taken down an episode ourselves, but nobody told us to.
I only ever had one guest come back after I put it up and ask me to take it down, edit it. And I said no. And that was Jeff Pulver. And he was concerned because in the interview at this time, he was like in his late 40s. He was talking about when he was a teenager having a pirate radio station. And I was like, he was worried legally. And I'm like, Jeff, here's the statute of limitations on this. I'm not re-editing the episode.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, on that note, we are now going into number 2 of this episode, and this is Within the Realm.
Are you the curious type and want to see things in a different light? This is Steve Garrett, host of Within the Realm. Join me as we explore the stories, the history, and the culture found at the intersection of the Great Plains, the Ozark Mountains, and the Cherokee Nation. So, if you are the curious type, take a trip with me within the realm. You can find us at withinpodcast.com or your favorite platform.
All right. So, okay, usually we have this at the end of the show, but I also wanted to give a little bumpity bump here. We're going to be having our very first live event in January on YouTube, and we are hosting the incredible Mike Russell from Music Radio Creative. And so what he's going to be doing is he's going to be doing kind of like a live audio clinic. And I'm going to share a URL with y'all right now, libsyn.com/Mike, and Mike is Mike, Russell, Russell, all together. And obviously there'll be a link in the show notes. If you have or have had in the past an issue with your audio that you just want to figure out how to fix, he's actually going to be taking patients. So if you have like a piece of audio that you're like, oh my God, I can't salvage this, or you just skipped it, or you really want to make it better or something, get a 2-minute snippet of that audio and send it via that page. Again, libsyn.com/Mike Russell all together. And you can submit it in there, and then he will do it live when we have him live in January. So we want to get these in by the end of this month of November, so that he has time to be able to kind of look like which are the bits of audio that are going to be the best and most helpful for everybody. So if you do have any of that, please, please, please submit it. We want to make this as helpful as possible. Any kind of crappy audio that you feel is crappy, that needs fixing, send it over and snip out that a 2-minute little bit that he's going to be able to work through. It's going to be amazing. And if that works well, we actually have more partners on to be able to do this kind of work together next year. So we can all just up-level our audio production as a whole and we don't suck so much. Did I really say that? I actually did say that. Sorry about that. Okay. So, Quora question. This is it possible to get fired for having a podcast, Rob?
Yeah. So I saw this question come up and I go, yes. My answer was not just possible. It has happened multiple times, with the first instance going back to early 2005 when Nate from the Nate and Di show was fired from his job for having a podcast. I'll have a link in the show notes to the interview from early 2005 with Nate and Di talking about this. But yes, this is not just possible. It's happened. It's happened multiple times. And it's not something recent. I mean, it happened before podcasting was a thing. Before iTunes supported podcasting, someone had gotten fired because of their podcast. That's how far back it goes. So yes.
That's amazing because who was listening?
His boss, and he was in a state that was a right to work state, which means the right to fire you state. And yeah, so his boss didn't like his political bend in his show and fired him.
Oh my gosh. Well, there you have it. Okay. You got some industry news, Rob.
Yes, we're losing 2 podcast hosting companies out there. Sounder.fm is pivoting and closing down their podcast hosting. So like that will happen here in the next few weeks. So if you're at Sounder and you need some help moving over to Libsyn, let me know. And Hipcast is closing down the end of December, a long-time player in the space. So if you host on either, need a place to move, we are here to help you just like we were 18 years ago. So just email me, rob@libsyn.com or support@libsynsupport.com, and we will help you get your show moved over to Libsyn where you can not have to worry about moving it again.
All right. Then we have just a little bit of news. Deadline for the 2023 AMBI submissions is November 18th. And you can go find some information over at ambis.com. And then there's going to be a live show, actually. The 3rd annual AMBIs will be held at the Barry Manilow Theater in Las Vegas on March 7th, 2023. And this is going to be live, as in like in real life, in actual stage. And I believe it's going to be live streamed. More details to come on that. I have a link in the show notes if you would like to submit your show to be considered to receive an AMBI. So we're just putting that there. All right. And here's another email. Hi, Rob. I have a few questions on stats. With YouTube, are people more listening to audio versions or are they watching a video version?
Well, obviously, they do both. But the main reason to submit to YouTube, so I think this is where the person was going, is for the discoverability in search. But YouTube Red is focused on just the audio part. And YouTube now has a YouTube podcast page, and they are getting more into podcasting. That said, clearly there are video podcast people are watching. It is just that many of those video only on YouTube podcasts, quote unquote, they get a handful of watches, if that.
Yeah, it's got to be a whole thing, y'all. It's got to be a whole thing. You, in the same way that we were talking about before in terms of Twitter and marketing and getting your show out there, this is an actual, again, we've worked really hard to get folks to subscribe to our YouTube channel, by the way, youtube.com/Libsyn. I mean, it's a whole team trying to get people to go over there and look at the videos and obviously putting great content out. So it's slowly growing and we're really proud of that. But again, it depends, right? I actually do. Yesterday, I was just going to tell you know what? Yesterday, Rob, it was the very first time that I watched a podcast episode that I had already listened to. How about that? That was a first for me. I stood back and I was like, I am actually consuming this content again, watching it now after I listened to the audio, I was just like, wow, I must really like this.
What was in the video content that you felt was of value to dedicate that time again to it?
Well, it was because I'm obsessed with pens and stationery. It's a podcast called The Stationery Cafe, and they talk about, with a little more conversation about stationery from the Japanese side of things. And so there was a part in the end that they were talking about these stamps, and I knew that they were looking at the stamps, and I was like, oh, I got to go see what these stamps are. And I saw that the episode was on YouTube. Like I didn't go seeking it. Like I didn't go like, I got to go watch it. I just happened to have opened YouTube and I said, oh, look, the episode is up that I just listened to. Oh yeah, those stamps. And I just watched the whole thing. I just had it in the background. And when that part came, I looked and I was like, oh, so that's what made it.
Okay.
That's what did it for me, that they showed something that I wanted to see.
Right. So there was something of clear value.
Yes, absolutely.
Hence, why you do video is something of value. Just you sitting there talking and putting a camera in front and turning a light on and there's no value. There's no value.
Yeah, for sure. All right. This is another question. Does the industry include video views as podcast downloads for shows, or is it still seen as separate?
Definitely seen as separate, as in podcast downloads are different compared to a file stuck on YouTube, where the producer does not really control it. So I'm going to go in a little bit here on why it's different here, and then we'll get back to answering the question at hand. But in podcasting, when someone listens via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast app, the file is being delivered from where the producer is hosting the file. They control that relationship with the listener. That is a paradigm shift versus with YouTube, where you upload to YouTube and then all bets are off. Google YouTube still owns that relationship with the audience. There's not much you can do to modify the file for that specific audience member. In podcasting, you as the producer have that direct relationship with the audience. For example, you can use, say, Libsyn's ad stitching tools to promote an upcoming book tour to your audience, where each city, each metro area gets their own customized message detailing when and where you will be signing books. So people in Nashville will hear one message, someone in Atlanta will hear a different message, someone in Dayton, Ohio will hear another message. Or maybe you have a local meetup where you're going to be going to different meetups around the country, or something else city specific. You don't get that option with YouTube because you don't have that relationship with the audience. I know this was a stats question, and I'm sorry about the tangent there, but back to the stats, it is seen as separate in the industry because 3 seconds that counts as a view, and a minute counts as a download. So there's that part of it. So that throws the numbers off, and there's no verification. You have to rely on what YouTube says is the numbers, whereas we can have IAB and verification, and there's some tracking and other things that go on in the podcasting world that is different than what happens over at YouTube. So that's why it's different. But again, fundamentally, it really is different what you can do and how you can interact with your audience. And that interaction can rely on different ads and different copy and different things that you do out there with your audience.
And then the last part of this question is, I have people saying I have this many download totals, and come to find out they're using what they do with video too.
Some people will say, they have a higher number and they include that. And here's what I would say. Advertisers will be upset if that happens if you don't let them know. Others want you to just break out what it is from YouTube, i.e. if you say you have 100K listens, views, whatever you want, however you phrase it, downloads is the correct term in podcasting per episode, and 50K is from YouTube, you must disclose that. You can't just say I have 100K downloads and then later on go, oh yeah, well 50K of them are views from YouTube. No. If it's 2K from YouTube, that's not such a big deal. If you had 98K podcast, then 2K from YouTube to get you 100. But still a good idea to say up front what it is, what the breakout is. What people now say is the show is simulcast on YouTube. And then you say, yeah, the show, here's my podcast, which is also simulcast on YouTube. And then you say, of the 100K audience reach for each episode, X number of K are from YouTube and the rest are podcast downloads.
Yeah.
Now, some agencies count YouTube plays, views 1-to-1 versus podcast downloads. Others cut YouTube in half or more. So it just depends on who the ad buyers are and how they look at it. But absolutely, they are looked at different. Don't say, here's my reach, and not, if it's a significant part in YouTube, not break it out that there's significant parts on YouTube.
This is a really quick drop of information, folks. The podcast host is doing a little indie pod census for 2022. There's going to be a link in the show notes so that you can click through it. It takes about 10 minutes. It is very, very good. It's a very good survey. They are going to be doing really great stuff after they get that information. And I do feel that this is one of the strongest ways for us to survey indie podcasters, right? He really talks the language of who we are. So if you want to do that, go ahead and head over there. We are now moving into our last email that we have. Hi, Elsie and Rob. On my Libsyn statistics page, I'm able to see my daily downloads and daily distinct listeners. Is there a place where I can see my distinct listeners for a week or month? I feel like this would give me a better idea of how many listeners I truly have in a way that download numbers aren't really able to capture. Thanks so much. This is from Dave from Walking is Fitness.
Okay. So Dave, what you really want to look at here is your 7, 30, and 90-day stats in Libsyn 5. That tells you much more about your audience size. How many downloads is an episode getting at 7 days versus one release that's 6 months ago for 7 days? Is that audience growing? Looking at that gives you the best number. I mean, I know you say you think that looking at the listeners truly capture that away. Download numbers aren't, but what good is having listeners if they're not downloading? What you really want to know is how many downloads am I going to get on the next episode, right? The unique per day is nice to see how many downloads you have for each listener is getting. But once you stretch that out over more days, again, what it is that you really want to know is, and I think the answer is, how many people will be listening to my next episode? Isn't that the core of any of this? And the best way to tell that is to look at how many listened to your most recent episodes, again, for 7 and 30 days specifically. And that is available in the stats in Libsyn 5 UI. And it's also good to, people want to compare to others. I always say it's best to compare to yourself. How is my show doing that I released a month ago for the 30-day number versus one 6 months ago? How is it doing for 7 days versus one 3 and 6 and 9 months ago? How are you doing? Is your show growing? Is it staying the same? Is it declining? And that 7, 30, 90-day stats that we have in Libsyn 5, Dave, that's going to give you the best answer to your question of how big is your audience.
All right. And now this is our promo number 3. This is That's All Funny.
Hi, my name's Lorenzo Ariola, and I started a podcast called That's All Funny, where I'll talk about my life and all the stupid crap that I've ever done, some of my dumb opinions, and any other reasons why you can hate me, or I can hate me, or the world can hate me, or I could hate the world. But check it out wherever you find all your podcasts. Just search That's All Funny. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You know what's not funny? Stats. Geographic and user agents, to be specific. And first up, country breakdown for October per downloads geographically from all sources. And the United States at 64.6%, Canada at 5.3%, UK 4.9%, Australia 3.6%, Germany 2.7%, Sweden 1.6%. That was all the countries we got over 1%. Rounding out the top 20 in order are Japan, Spain, Mexico, Brazil, France, Netherlands, India, Denmark, Russia, New Zealand, Ireland, Switzerland, Norway, and South Africa. We had one new country in the list versus September, and that was with South Africa cracking the top 20 in October. And between September and October, those with changes greater than 0.2% was the United States, moving up to 64.6%. From 64.1% the previous month. Of course, check your stats to see how you measure up to these numbers for October. And now into the user agent part of stats. And for October, across all shows globally hosting on Libsyn and Libsyn Pro for IAB stats, mobile downloads were at 93.8% of all downloads going direct to mobile devices. Computer downloads were at 5.95%, and home voice attendants plus set-top boxes were at 0.24% in October. The iOS to Android ratio in October was 6.2 to 1. The mobile aggregator apps not from Spotify or from Apple in October were 10.03% of all downloads. So it's all the other aggregator apps combined. And the big dog in aggregator apps is still Apple, with Apple Podcasts app, iTunes, and the whole Apple ecosystem coming in at 70.7% of all downloads for October. Number 2 for October was Spotify at 13.13%. Number 3 was Google Podcasts at 2.17%. Number 4 was Overcast at 1.75%. Now is everyone over 1%? The others under 1% in order were Pocket Cast, CastBox, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Amazon Music, the podcast app, Player FM, Podcast Republic, Downcast, AntennaPod, Samsung Podcast, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, Eva, Pandora, Podimo, Castro, Mixerbox, iCatcher, Podkicker, your application name, RSS Radio, Podcast Guru, and Rezo. And then many more that come in at less than 0.02% and don't really warrant mentioning yet. Again, those were based on IAB numbers. So there you go. That was across the Apple ecosystem. Now, one more thing on stats, and this is more about advertising part of it. Our advertising team updated their monthly podcast advertising rates. These rates are, which are denoted as cost per thousand or CPM, and that thousand is milli, that M for milli. The data is derived from actual sales data from across 3,000-ish podcasts in the Advertised Cast marketplace. For October 2022, the average CPM rate for a 60-second spot was at 24.13, so $24.13, down a smidge from September's $24.15. Note, this is the average CPM rate for a single 60-second ad drop, host read in an episode. If an episode has, for example, 3 ad drops, it would be 3 times $24.13. The highest CPM category for October, or the highest categories for October, were Kids and Family at $28 CPM, Technology at $27, and True Crime also at $27. Average means average. Some shows had higher CPM rates, some had lower. Thanks, Dave and team, for keeping the space educated on where the average ad rates are for podcasting on a per ad read basis. And of course, if you are interested in advertising on a podcast, maybe to promote your show to a similar audience or maybe your product, please email me directly, rob@libsyn.com, and I can get you to the right people, and AdvertiseCast can help you grow your show or sell your product via podcast advertising. Again, email me direct, rob@libsyn.com, if you're looking to advertise on other podcasts. All right.
Right on. All right. And then where have we been? Well, I was on YouTube Live co-hosting with Kate Erickson from Entrepreneurs on Fire for Breakthroughs in Podcasting Success. Please go ahead and check that out. It was an amazing, amazing event. I was also on Twitter Spaces. So that is about it. Where are we going?
I can tell you where I wasn't. Hear that? That's my wedding ring. So I was not in Miami the day before my 25th anniversary.
No, you were not.
Dave Jackson was, and he was down there speaking to a conference on medical conference about podcasting, and heard that went really well, and people were very receptive to hear about podcasting there. So that's where I was not.
Yes, good for you. Now, where are we going? We're actually going to we're having some, I think, 2 more live events in November. You just heard about them actually already on the show. We're going to do the live event for the feed in November. So that's going to be awesome. I do believe there's another one coming in December. Not quite sure exactly what that one is going to be. And in January, we have the Mike Russell webinar or live event as well. We're doing Twitter Spaces. So yes, we are sticking with Twitter for the moment. Please follow us at twitter.com/Libsyn to participate in our Twitter Spaces that we're doing there, and follow us on YouTube. That's it. How about you?
Well, physically, we're going to be going to a few shows, and the first half of 2023 is looking like this right now. Podfest Expo in Orlando, January 26th to 29th. Hope to see you there. Podcast Movement Evolutions, March 7th to 10th in Las Vegas. NAB Show, April 15th to 19th, also in Las Vegas. And then She Podcast Live, starting June 19th in Washington, D.C. So that's the first half of 2023. We'll probably have a few other places that we go to, and we'll mention those as we get closer. But check your calendars, block off those dates now. And if you're looking for a job in podcasting, make sure to go to podcastingjobs.com. That's a common thing we like to mention at the end. And don't forget to send in your feedback for anything we did or did not mention in this episode. You can record that feedback and email to us, thefeed@libsyn.com, or you can call us 412-573-1934. Or finally, you can use SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/thefeed.
Ooh, all right. Well, we will see you live on November 30th, everybody. We look forward to to having you there.
Well,
all right.
Well, you'll see us. I don't think we'll see them.
Well, they could be chatting. That's the whole point. And we'll give you guys shout outs. But anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Talk with you soon.
Ciao.
Bye.